I feel a little bit like one of the Blues Brothers, but I'm ready to go. Landcare is a small incorporated organisation. We work in the district, in the Shire of Serpentine-Jarrahdale, and our mission statement is to provide the means for the community to care for the land today in a way that'll leave it better for tomorrow. That's how we work. We work with land degradation, to reverse land degradation, water quality and conservation of habitat for flora and fauna. There's 3 species of WA black forest cockatoo, and I'm sure that most of you are already familiar with that. They all have different habits and characteristics, and really probably one of the key ones for us in our project is their high fidelity to nesting hollows. The project that I'm really going to talk about is about our community engagement and a project that we've been working on, a sort of education and really to reverse the decline in the black cockatoo species. The loss of breeding habitat was probably one of the key factors to the decline that was initially identified. There's a lot of other reasons for their decline, but the loss of stag trees, I can't even read that from here, here we go. Competition for hollows logging, the forest ageing condition, and urban sprawl. They're the key reasons for the loss of the breeding habitat. And more recently, I think there's been a bit more focus on the loss of foraging habitat, but the other reasons are also all contributing factors. So we're a small Landcare organisation. There's 2 part-time staff. But we've got a pretty active membership board and management committee. And one of the members of the board was talking to some people from BHP Billiton, and they had all this waste black polypipe. I expect that at one point in time they probably would have just dug a hole and buried it. But what happened was they started to put it into containers and send it down to us. And we started to make things out of it. The garden beds were a huge success, and that was probably one of the first things we did. But you know, people on the land are very inventive, and we started to look at animal hides and letter boxes and all sorts of things. But around 2005, when we started to get this pipe, the WA Museum and the Water Corp started their Cockatoo Care project, and we became involved with those organisations, and particularly the WA Museum, and we designed a nesting hollow for black cockatoos. It's gone through a whole range of different design phases. Initially, you can see the one with the bark around it. That was probably the first prototype into and out of the nest box. And as a prototype, it looked all right, but it wasn't going to have the longevity that we were looking for in the hollow. We've got at the same time we started to get the pipe, we also got rescued a whole heap of trees from the forest highway, and we milled and dried that timber, and some of that timber we started to use in the bases, as you can see in this one here. More recently, we've been using a much heavier weld mesh, and you can see on the far side there's a couple of posts sticking out, sacrificial posts. Initially in the first prototype, they were inside the tree, inside the nest box. What we found by putting them on the outside. We used a stirrup to hang them on the inside, and then it became the first point of monitoring, in fact, because you could see the rounding of the edges of the posts. First we started with a bit of pine, we went to a bit of jarrah, and some of the timber that we rescued from the forest highway was not suitable for furniture making or any other things really, so we've started to mill that, and we use that for the sacrificial posts now. We started with maybe a 2x1 post, but because it's really the key maintenance area in the Cockatube, we've gone to say 2x3, and now we're using chewit, which is pretty dense. You can see there inside, you'd have no idea whether or not the nest had been used from the initial nest boxes, so it's been a much better point of observation. Lottery West were our first funders. They funded the installation of a number of nest boxes around the Serpentine-Jarrahdale area, but one of our key things was to get the message out, and we started by having a poster competition amongst the local primary schools, and kids submitted their posters about black cockatoo recovery, and the winning poster ended up being produced into a sign and is at the Serpentine Falls National Park. The BHP Billiton, who were delivering the pipe initially from the Leinster mine, got the Leinster school kids to paint the container that we were getting the pipe delivered in. So the project started to take off, and that awareness started to happen for us, and also for the plight of the cockatoos. So it's the volunteers who make the nest boxes, and as you can see, there was a lot of stuff on the ground initially. You know, the project's come a long way since 2005. We use benches now, and the back of the utes. We're still not, you know, it's not a factory production or anything like that, but we do have a lot of volunteers who come out regularly and give us a hand with the nest box construction. Usually we make a day once every couple of months if we've got a big order, or if we've got orders coming up, and sometimes we pre-cut ladders and stakes and bases and that. So we've got it up to a good speed, which is handy, because otherwise, you know, it's left up to me in the end of the day. One of the great things is you see a lot of young crew in these slides here, and those people are mostly willing workers on organic farms that work with local landholders who are also associated with SJ Landcare. And it's given the project an international flavour as well. The WA Museum has info sheets on their website that are written in a number of languages, and so when we get some woofers come to give us a hand, I'll find out what their nationality is, and I race inside and get on the computer and print out some fact sheets in their language, so they can take it back. There was one woofer who came to an information session like today on a Wednesday night. On Thursday, he helped us put the nest boxes together. The following week, we did some installations. He came out, took the GPS locations. There was one nest box that we were repairing, and when we got up in the tree in the cherry picker, there was a red-tailed black cockatoo chick inside. So within the space of a week, he probably achieved what it's taken us quite, a number of years to get to. So it's a pretty good project. And it was interesting, there was another woofer who came past recently and gave us a hand for a couple of days, and he'd heard about the project from some of his friends who'd done it perhaps a year before, and he was pretty happy to be involved as well. So it's a really good project in that regard, and to get the black cockatoo plied out on an international level as well. We supplement the cockatubes with a range of other animal hides and nesting boxes, bat boxes, and that was a pretty big delivery that we made one day. Yeah. All right, so when it comes to tree selection and installation, we use a cherry picker, and we use an arborist as well. Once you're putting these nest boxes up in trees, you know, they weigh about between 20 and 40 kilos. Some of them get quite large. The wall thickness varies. We don't really get a choice of what pipe we get delivered. So, you know, so they vary in size, and they also vary in weight. Generally, if you look at the statistics, something like about 95% of the natural hollows are in marri trees. That's probably got something to do with the tree structure itself, the physiology of the tree, but also jarrah, chewit and wandoo. We look for an open canopy so the hollow's a little bit more visible, and there has an easy flight in. The northeast aspect, because of the weather conditions, and you know, to be honest, we're putting a bit of black plastic in a tree and it's going to get hot, and that probably gives it some of the most protection. Although we have had some independent weather data, temperature data done, and we found that mostly the hollows mimic the temperature in the natural hollow, so that's great as well. We put them above 8 metres, an average of about 12. The limitation is really the cherry picker in that regard. We fix them at 4 points with coach bolts, and depending on the weight, depends on the size of the coach bolts that we use, because you know, the last thing I want is one to be falling out of the tree. And we put a bit of mulch in the bottom for nesting material, and also add the sacrificial posts. It's a photo of Alan Elliott. So in the early days, the installation was a little bit more primitive than it is today. Alan's the guy who really got the design together, got the project together, worked with the museum in the early days. These days we use a rope and pulley system. Initially it was just a couple of pulleys. We've doubled that up, and particularly when it gets to the heavier nest boxes, it becomes a lot easier to get them up in the tree. And there we go. So just some of the locations that we've put them. We've put them in a wide variety of locations in the southwest, probably in that line from Eneabba to Albany, and all the way in between. There's a bit of picture. We've got about 50 up in Eneabba, Mundaring. A lot of the local governments have become involved in the project, and we've put them in quite a range of areas. The interesting thing about the longer we work with the project, the more we find out about the habit of the birds and things like that. We're finding that there's probably 2 key populations: a northern population in around the northern wheat belt, and another population down around the southwest, around the Stirlings, between the Stirling Highway, the Stirling Ranges and Albany. Monitoring between at dawn and dusk are probably the best times, because of the parental activity around the nest boxes. They come in to feed and things like that. The sacrificial post, as I said, probably that chewing activity is one of the first things that gives you the indication that there is actually some activity in the tree. Tony Kirkby, formerly from the WA Museum, gave us the tip to get a stick and give the tree a tap, and you give it a bit of a bang at the bottom there, and if there's anything in the nest in the hollow, it'll usually stick its head out, and so that'll give you a sure sign. And generally, if you're monitoring, keep a record, and we'd be happy for the feedback. So we have had some success. You can see here the chewing on the post, and a couple of chicks. The top two photos are from that Eneabba area. It's an area that the CSIRO, Professor Dennis Saunders, has been monitoring since 1967. They put 30 nest boxes up, and they had pretty much some great success immediately. And the little red-tailed black chick on the bottom there, that's around the Serpentine River area. The first red-tailed black cockatoo chick that we actually found that fledged from a nest from a Cockatube was at Murdoch University. The interesting thing about that was that soon after that we got a lot more orders, which was great. That actual Cockatube was in a pine tree, so pretty amazing. So we've got some cute little fellas, if that's your definition of cute. This is a nest box that we've got out the back of the Landcare Centre. There was, well, you can see 8 birds there. There was another 4 birds in that tree that I couldn't get in the shot. I wanted it next to the nest box. They've been back every couple of years. We've been monitoring that one pretty closely, but as yet we haven't had any breeding success in that one. But sometimes you see the birds in groups of 3, and one of the theories is that it's the parents with the younger bird, and they're just taking it around and showing it the ropes, and hopefully one of the younger birds in this group will get the idea eventually. Yeah, so we've got a few. So we have had some success. But initially we were told that if you put them in the forest, we were going to be taken to court, which I can sort of understand in some regards. You know, it is thick black pipe going up into a forest, but these days we're told that some of the carnabies chose artificial hollows over natural ones, and that was at the site near Eneabba where they put 30 nest boxes up. We're told that they're an effective tool in known breeding areas, and Jeff Barrett, who probably when the project started was opposed to the idea, more recently said that without the artificial nest box program, that carnabies in particular could well be extinct within 50 years. So, and that's not too far away. The success at that Eneabba site was pretty amazing. They installed 30 in September 2011. Within a couple of months, they had 4 of the cockatubes already being used, with 2 birds successfully fledged. A year later, they were looking at about 19, and in fact 21 of those 30 are being used, and that resulted in an increase in that population, in that breeding population, an increase of 38%, which was pretty successful. They've put up another 20 at that site, and we're hoping to get some information back on that soon as well. We have a website which is pretty good because we don't have a Landcare SJ website. That's a work in progress. It's been in progress for quite a while. We've trademarked the name Cockatube. We thought that was pretty clever.